Hello and welcome to Mountain Patriot Homestead. We are in the kitchen. I've got my apron on, so let's get cooking. Well, today we're going to do something a little bit different. First of all, no desserts. I know, but I thought maybe we'd just switch it up a little bit. But not only are we not having desserts, but we are going to talk about not one, but two recipes. Now, these aren't anything fancy. They're actually very easy to put together, but the main focus of this is using what I have. Now, you hear me talk about this in pretty much every cooking video that I do, and that applies to anything that we do here on the farm, is as much as possible we try to use what we have. Now, I could have just ran to town today and picked up what I needed to make recipes that I wanted to make today, but for us, it's about an hour round trip, actually a little bit more, probably an hour and 20-minute round trip just for the drive, and that's not including the shopping. So unless I have to go to town, I just don't. So our recipes today are focusing on using what I have here in the kitchen. So let's talk about the first recipe. The first recipe was going to be a pizza. I know, pizza. Everybody has pizzas. We've talked about pizza on here. This one is just purely simple because I was going to make one from scratch, show you how I make my homemade dough, and just go from there. However, when I tested out my yeast, which you should do every time you're making a product from yeast to test it for viability, I found out my yeast wasn't activating, and I even tried feeding it a little sugar, still nothing. So I knew that I wasn't going to get the rise that I wanted, so I nixed that idea. So I used what I had, and that's why I try to have different things here just to supply us with those days that I might need something quick, or maybe my yeast just isn't working. So here's what I did. This part is not necessary, but I was preparing to make the homemade pizza, and it was going to be a square pizza. So I was just putting some foil on top of my baking sheet, and while the oven was preheating to 425 Fahrenheit, I was using one of my leftover butter wrappers that I've kept in the refrigerator to just kind of grease down this sheet. Now again, I was preparing to do the homemade pizza crust, so that is why I was actually greasing it down. After I figured out that my yeast wasn't working, I pulled out a pizza crust that I had here at the house. It's just one of the ultra thin crust. My husband loves thin crust pizzas, and over the years I've grown fond of them myself. So I just put that in the center of my sheet that I had already prepared and got the toppings ready to put on top. Now, if I had went on ahead with the idea of making the homemade pizza, I would have shown you how to make the actual pizza sauce, but since I'm not, I just used a leftover amount of pizza sauce that I had in the refrigerator from another recipe that I had made. Just spread it out on the crust. Again, this is not any type of a fancy recipe or anything that it's going to take you a great deal of time because pretty much everything is ready made and it is just a quick meal that those nights that you would like to have pizza, maybe you don't live like I do anywhere near that you could call out for pizza or even run to get one. This is so simple to make, and as you can see, as usual, I had to make a mess. Again, because this was a last minute adaptation of a pizza, I instead of going with the ground beef topping that I was going to use, I just went ahead with the frozen pepperoni that I keep in the freezer for just such emergencies. And it is still frozen and stuck together. So I had quite a time pulling it apart and it wanted to stick and tear. So I just kind of went back and added some extra on top and just kind of patched up the holes. Plus, nobody around my house is going to complain about extra pepperoni. I don't know about y'all, but I just love cheese. And so I want to make sure that I have plenty of mozzarella cheese. And I'll do a little bit and put it on there and do a little bit more and put it on there. This time I didn't go extra heavy with the cheese like I have been known to do, but I did want to make sure that I got enough to make it really good. So after baking it at 425 for about 15 minutes, it come out. It was crispy and hot and delicious, and we didn't wait around to get off into it. So we got it served up on plates and then just a little sprinkle of what my husband calls stinky cheese. Parmesan cheese for most folks, but that was our lunch, or from my neck of the woods, we'd call it dinner. All right, recipe number 2. What I was going to do is originally I wanted to make fried chicken, good old homemade fried chicken. Now I could do it easy enough on the stove, but I kind of like to do it outside because that takes the mess of splatter and all of that outdoors and it keeps from heating up the house. But that didn't work out because even though the chances of rain had dropped down very low, and I thought we weren't supposed to be getting rain today, at least not that amounted to anything. It started very early, pre-dawn hours, and it has rained off and on all day here. And about the time I got ready to go outside to do this, it decided to just pour. So that nixed that idea. So I decided I wanted to make a roast chicken using my Dutch oven. Now, the Dutch oven I love using my Dutch oven to roast things because it makes everything so tender and so moist. And I was going to use potatoes and onions and that sort of thing as the base, my chicken on top. So, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Well, I found out that I was out of potatoes. So, what do? I go to my freezer and I pull out a couple of ears of frozen corn and I pulled out my frozen onions and I pulled out my frozen peppers, things grown here on the farm that I just had in the freezer, for easy meals, things to put together, and that's exactly what I use today. So let me show you how I put together that roast chicken recipe. In the bottom of my large cast iron Dutch oven, I just put a little bit of olive oil. It doesn't take much, just enough to kind of keep those vegetables from sticking. Just put that in the bottom. You could also use bacon grease if you'd like, just whatever your favorite type of oil is and what you have on hand. I took my ears of corn that, as you can see, I just freeze mine with the husk and everything still on it, because when you husk them out and silk them, it is just like eating fresh corn once it's cooked. And I've found that this is the best way that we like it. You might give it a try if you've not tried that before, but that's what I'm doing here is just got my corn ready, broke it up into some serving size pieces, about the size of what we eat. Of course, adjust it for your family. And I just laid that directly onto the bottom. I'm adding my diced up onions that I had in the freezer. Just put them right there in the middle. And I always like a little bit of spice, so I just threw in some frozen cayenne and little small jalapeno peppers that I had in the freezer. Just threw them there on top of my onions. You don't have to use those. Adjust it for what your family likes. Then I just come in there and just drizzled a little bit more olive oil on top. Again, use the oil or lard or whatever of your choice. Now, the way you season this up is going to be purely personal preference. I was kind of going with a little bit of Southwest, kind of a Southwest twist on this because I'm thinking ahead of how I'm going to use the leftovers. And so I just put a little sprinkle of salt, come in there with just some black pepper. Then, of course, I've got to follow up with some garlic powder. I love garlic powder on just about anything. So, a good healthy sprinkling of garlic powder. And I had a little jar of Southwestern Chipotle seasoning that I had in the cabinet. It has all different types, of course, Chipotle peppers, different type of chili peppers. It has some oh, cumin, all of that different type of thing. And I just sprinkled that. And then I started preparing my chicken, just patting it dry, making sure inside and outside are good and dry because I'm going to come back on top of it to get it good and seasoned up. Now, I didn't show it, but I did oil down my chicken once I got it dried off. I just put some olive oil in it. And I'm coming back with the same seasonings that I used on the vegetables, just salt, pepper, garlic powder, and the Southwestern Chipotle seasoning. Just got that all over the skin, got that seasoned up good because, as I always say, I do not like bland food, but you season yours up however y'all like it. You could use rosemary, thyme, marjoram, whatever poultry seasonings, whatever flavors you're going for, use that. Make it for what your family likes. Once this is seasoned up, I'm going to put my lid on it, put it in the oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 20 minutes per pound or until the internal temperature of the chicken reaches 165. Once the time had been reached, I wanted to check the internal temperature, and I check it in a couple of different places. I check it in the breast and in the thigh because I want to make sure that the chicken is done. You do not want to eat raw poultry, and this turned out so good. It was so tender and so juicy. My thigh and drumstick looked like a mess by the time I got it to my plate, but wow, it was so delicious. And like I said, it is so juicy coming out of that Dutch oven. So tell me, out of these two meals, which one's your favorite? The easy pizza or the delicious roasted chicken? Let me know down in the comments. There you go, folks. That is two recipes made with what I had here on the farm, and I hope you've enjoyed them. I know it's nothing fancy, but we don't eat fancy here on the homestead, and I just wanted to share with you how we made do with what we've got, and I hope you're able to do that too. I do hope you come back again. If you would, click subscribe down there if you're not subscribed to this channel so you get notified of future videos. And if you are a member, thank you so much. I hope y'all come back, and I love y'all. Mountain Patriot Homestead, signing out.